Okay, so I forgot to start the hangout for like 20 minutes. So for those of you that see this, I talked about homework 2 will be coming out tonight, which is the 9th. We're talking about gathering requirements. We're in chapter 5. Homework 2 will be out tonight, but it's going to involve a couple questions from the book, proposing me a very initial, like 1-paragraph description of what you're wanting to do for your project, and then analyzing a project management software that I'll assign to you. So I just summed up 20 minutes in one. So we're talking about gathering requirements, impertinence, impartiality, relaxation of constraints, attention to detail. Every fact must fit with every other fact. So requirements have to be very specific and detailed, and if they're not, you end up with all these conflicts between, well, this one says it should do this, and this requirement says it should do this. What is it really? So they all have to jive. Reframing, view the organization in new ways. And this goes hand in hand with this impertinence thing. Question everything. Just because things are done one way doesn't mean they should continue to be done that way. Is there a way to reframe that, restructure things to be better? So just some kind of guidelines for that process. So deliverables and outcomes. So what's going to come out of gathering requirements? You're going to have information that you collected from the users. You're going to have all the documents you gathered. Any computer-based information. So if they have databases that are going to be involved with your new system, what are they storing inside there? Closely related to the documents and files. Understanding of organizational components. So what's the structure of the organization? What's the relationship between the different parts of the business? Just checking my phone because last time I was getting phone messages from someone on the Hangout and I didn't even realize it. So. So what's the objective of the business? What information needs are there? What are their rules of data processing? So especially anything involving money, you know, you get into dealt with accounting at all. What do they call that? A dual something accounting. Everything has to be checked off by 2 people, that kind of thing, so that if one person's ripping you off. Unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't do it that way, and that's why so many of these small businesses find out that their bookkeeper's been taking money for 10 years and it's embezzled like $1 million and they never do. It happens.
That's why you pull the interruption. Just have everybody in on it, and to check each other goes out the window.
Yeah, there you go. So, you know, those kind of rules that they have in place. But again, questioning, are those rules right? Key events. So, depending what kind of business you have and how they're structured, there might be certain things, certain key events for that business. So here is just a little table out of the book for deliverables. The type of deliverables, so stuff you collect from the user's interview, transcripts, notes, meeting notes, pretty simple. Documents, so the business mission and strategy statement, if they have that. So again, a lot of these examples are like, of course, if you go to Coca-Cola, they have a business mission and strategy statement. Orbital shift, maybe we had one. I think we did in our business plan, you know, like, so a lot of small businesses don't have like a strategy statement. The forms, the procedure manuals, and again, like, there's an awful lot of businesses you could go work in this town that don't have a procedure manual, right? I mean, even job descriptions aren't always going to be available. So training manuals, I mean, consultation or consultant reports. Well, the business has never had a consultant, then they don't have any reports. So computer-based information, so results from joint application design sessions, which we'll talk about in a second. Case repository content, so the case is the computer-aided system engineering. If they're using that, they might have some information to give you. And then as you start prototyping, displays and reports from prototypes. So the second table just kind of goes into, for these methods, what's the, well, these are traditional methods. How do we go about them? So interviewing interviews with individuals and talk to them. So, I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? You interview somebody. Observation of workers. So that's the fly on the wall. You don't want to interfere with what they're doing, but you want to be close enough and involved to see the specifics of what they're doing. But what happens when you watch someone? Yeah, they change what they're doing. So, you know, maybe you're watching, I mean, I guess I'll just keep picking on the bank teller thing because Amber, you know, maybe when you're not watching them, they're reading a magazine under the desk and playing Clash of Clans on their smartphone 3/4 of the day. But as soon as you watch them, you think they're going to do that. You know, they're probably not going to do that because they have that big brother feeling that they're being watched. Even though it's not like you're going to rat them out. That's not why you're there. They're going to behave differently. So, yeah. I already bought it.
I got that one this morning.
I play it on my Nexus tablet. It works good on the phones, but it's nice to have a little more space. But
Yeah, that's actually why I found that Google Reports thing. Buy that.
yeah, Google Opinion Rewards if you want free money.
Okay, that's something.
You know, I've earned over $30 on that thing since I told you guys.
See, I got smart. I told my wife, she got it. Way more.
Yeah, I get almost one a day, and usually I get 10 to 20 cents. And it's like a one-question survey. Which of these stores have you visited recently? You click on it, and it says, "How was your experience?" And you can rate it out of 5 stars. That's it.
Or,
Yeah.
or how often do you shop online?
Google Opinion Rewards. I got up to like $25, and then I bought some books and like comics on the Play Store over Christmas, and then since Christmas, I've already got $7 more on my business. It's just Play Store money. Yeah,
That's cool.
it's super easy. I mean, and it doesn't build up super fast, but I mean, $30 is $30, right? So traditional methods for determining. So this is kind of furthering that table: interviewing and listening, gather facts, opinions, and speculations. Some of these, what is a fact, right? That's how, you know, you're going in and interviewing someone, but sometimes these kind of juicy tidbits can give you some really good insight onto or into what you're creating. Body language and emotions. So, you know, some of these, if you were like a psychologist, would probably be helpful, but you know, is the person happy to share this stuff with you? Do they seem scared? Some of those things, you know, if you can read into what goes on in an organization by some of these subtle cues, which can both warn you about the upcoming project and how it's going to go. Yeah, right. Guidelines, so for doing the interview, so plan ahead. Don't just show up and say, oh yeah, if you could have whatever you want in the system, what would it be? You know, like have a script, because the idea is you want to ask everybody the same questions in the same order and not lead the conversation. And if it's too open-ended, you're not going to get, you want the same answers for 10 people, because then you kind of get some solid facts to it. If you only ask 2 of the people that question, well, can you say it's a for sure thing if 2 people answer it one way? 100%. Yeah, right. So planning the interview, a checklist, make an appointment for when it is, so make it formal. When you're in the interview, be neutral. You don't want to tell them what they currently have is awful, or the things that are going to bias what they're going to say. You want to be as neutral as you can.
Don't go in there and be like, our product's great. Yours, the one you're using is crap.
Right.
And then there's right
Yep.
now.
Yeah, right. Listen and take notes. You might even consider recording it. Because the problem with taking notes, as we all know, is then your focus isn't on something else. Yeah, you'd ask them. Yeah. But if you record them, then you can be more engaged with the conversation and you can review that later. Now, when I've done user interface reviews, like for prototypes, when I did a user interface class, we video recorded them. You video record them over their shoulders, so it's not, doesn't show their face. And you give them a set of tasks to do to test the prototype, and then you can watch unbiased how they use it. Seek a diverse view. So when you pick the people to interview, don't just select people that are all in the same position and the same mindset. Yeah, right. Just try to get some women and minorities. That's not really what it's saying. That is diverse, but get some people from different parts of the organization. So continuing this list, interview questions. You want to leave them open-ended. You're better off not doing yes or no questions. What feature would, or what is the number one thing that would improve your interaction with this process? That lets them talk, right? If you say, do you think it would be better if the system did this? And they say yes or no, you're not getting that much information out of it, right? So the open-ended lets them kind of go. Now, if they have a core system in place and you ask these open-ended questions, some people will want to talk more ever. So how do you control that conversation so you're not wasting your time all day listening to everybody gripe? Because that's what a lot of these are going to end up as gripe sessions, right? Like that's why you're there, is to make something better that's not good. So no pre-specified answers. That's the yes or no. You're not asking multiple choice questions. You're trying to be open-ended. So this is used to probe for unanticipated answers. So if during an open-ended question they come up with something you never had thought about, you can kind of delve deeper into that. You're not going to get those with the open-ended question. So close-ended, kind of the counter to the open-ended, right? So this is more like a survey where you're asking these specific questions. This works well if you know what the popular answers are. Initial interviews, open-ended, are really good. Later follow-up interviews, you can start to narrow on the closed-ended. So these are the top 4 things that people in your organization have identified as features for the new system. Which one of these is most important to you? Or rank these from 1 to 5, things like that. Once you kind of think you know what the answers are, you can start to narrow into these closed-ended. So, but don't show up before you've interviewed anyone and think you know what the answers are, right? That's kind of the idea. Start open-ended. Nice thing about close-ended is you can go much quicker with these, right? So there's a focus to it. So the effective interviewing, plan the interview, be neutral, listen and take notes, review the notes, seek diverse views. So like here they're saying potential users and managers. Don't just pick users, don't just pick managers. Here they say tape record the interview if permission is granted. Now, it depends on the organization. If they tell their employee you're going to be interviewed and it's going to be recorded or you can go home, it's fine. You know, I mean, it just depends. No, you're fired.
You're done. You're lost.
Hopefully you don't have to work at some places like that, but you never know what kind of crazy thing you're going to get wrapped up into from this process. So this is just an interview outline again with this really formal process, like listing who you interviewed, who was doing the interviewing, where it was, when it was, just giving it some structure. These general observations can be useful, like the person you interviewed seemed busy and was distracted. They didn't even have their computer on, so they probably don't even use the computer that much as part of their job. You know, some of those things can be influential. And then things you want to come back to. You discuss something that involves sales figures from 1998, but you didn't know what they were. And that's important for whatever reason. This is just kind of going off from this with the specific questions. Have you used the current sales tracking system? If so, how often? That's kind of a yes or no, right? Yes, I asked for a report of my project. Here's more observations. Seems anxious, maybe overestimated usage frequency. Some people are going to answer because they think it's the right answer and it protects their job. You know, I mean, what do you like least about this system? This is a good open-ended question. Sales are shown in units, not dollars. So this person thinks they'd rather see dollars than number of items shown.
Now, if you ask this, and so let's say you ask 20 people that are going to be using this same question, and they all say, "Oh, I'm like in dollars and stuff." And then you guys go and do it in dollars, and then they come back and go, "Actually, I don't really like it in dollars. I want it in units again."
Yeah, you know, my instant thing, and it's kind of this person. There must be a system in place. They're saying observation system can show sales in dollars, but the user does not know this. Layering off that, if I just saw this, sales are shown in units, as a software developer, I'd say let's just do both. Because that's probably not something that's difficult at all.
Yeah. Well, no,
and then you hedged your bets. But
if it's something that's really difficult to actually do, and everyone says they want it, but then they come back after they've used it a little bit and go, "Actually, I don't like it."
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
It happens. It happened with Orbital Shift, where we spent a lot of time on something, and then we're all excited because we get to tell them, "Yeah, we've got this new feature." And they use it, and they're like, "Oh, you know, no, actually, the other way is fine." How it, you know, like they didn't tell you over the 3 months you were working on it that they've decided the way it is fine. Similar situation. I mean, there's just some of those things. There's really nothing you can do about it. You try to hedge your bets. That's where, like, if you can make it do both. And then it just depends. Orbital Shift, we were developing one system to serve hundreds or potentially thousands of different clients, all with different needs. Depends if you're doing that kind of thing versus a system for one client with very specific needs. You'd hope that they would be able to decide about units or dollars, but what sounds great in one meeting, the next meeting can be completely different. So yeah, I'm not really sure that there's a solution to that problem. Not an easy one, for sure. This gets into my first slide. Like the user has to actually know what they want.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, it seems, I mean, like I said, it's really easy to read it, like, oh, the user needs to outline stuff, but I found that a lot of people, they don't have a clue what they actually want. Or they think they want it until they use it, and then they're like, well, actually, I don't like it that way, I'd much rather have it the old way.
Yeah, and that's why.
And I'm not saying you throw out the users at all.
Oh yeah,
I mean, but
that's why we're gonna kind of throw out some of this traditional methodology, and where I think the more agile methods are so much better, because then if they say they want something, mock it up, make a prototype, even if it doesn't really work right, and let them see it, and then then you can find out, they're like, oh no, that's not what I really wanted, and you haven't wasted a bunch of time. I'm sure when Microsoft developed Windows 8, they had indications that people were going to really like that interface. They didn't just decide themselves that people were going to love this.
Yeah, but if you had a touch screen device, it would have made a lot of sense. But if you didn't, like,
Right. So, but they still developed 3 years or something on that to then find out, oh wait, most people hate this, so.
well, it's too drastic.
Right.
Start with your hate start times.
Yeah, it's tricky. It really is, and it's frustrating. I'm completely with you. Usually they have no idea what they want. So it's balancing between, hopefully you have a better idea of what the end solution is, and kind of partially convincing them of that. Yeah, it's hard. So a couple more of these traditional methods, observing users. So this is a good supplement to interviews. If a person says something in an interview, if you can observe them doing their job and back that up, that's pretty useful. But like we already discussed, that unbiased data is super hard to get. People behave much differently when you're watching.
Thanks, man.
This was actually in a computer science ethics class. We talked about this. It was this case study. This company developed radiation machines for cancer treatment, and somebody got like overdosed in radiation, like 10,000 times what they were supposed to get. And the company that developed these machines was communicating with the hospital what was going on, and couldn't figure it out. So they just let him keep doing it. And they killed another person. And then they killed another person. And then they finally went in and observed the users, and they were testing it back at the company, trying to reduplicate this error, couldn't do it. They finally went in and figured out the people that use the machines every day are so fast, they could outpace the input capabilities of the software. None of the testers at the company used it enough because they didn't do it all day, every day, to do it that fast, so they couldn't reduplicate the error. But the radiation techs or whatever that used it could, and they would push a certain key that would mess it up, and then they'd get 10,000. So then their solution to all the hospitals that had their machine was pry that key off your keyboard so that people can't push it, and then this won't happen. And then a couple more people died. And eventually they pulled the machines, but this is kind of one of those cases where until you see the user using it themselves, you don't really know.
They were experimenting with lights and things on how things work. So they came in and they took out like half the lights and they observed people all day and probably two people way up. And then they left and probably two people way down. They came back and they put a bunch of lights in it. And people way up. They left and came back and put back down.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I don't know. You put spy cameras in and don't tell them you're watching them. I don't know like what the solution there is, but This is why there's shortcomings of some of these traditional methods, and why we'll discuss some of the other ones. Okay, so you've got some information. You're going to analyze it. So what are you going to try to discover? What are the current problems? You as a system developer or implementer, that's your best abilities if you can fix a problem. That's why I'm going to tell you, identify a problem and propose to me some solution to it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I mean, if you're not, no one's going to be happy. Change just for the sake of change, it never goes well. Opportunity to meet new need. So maybe their system that they currently have is fine, but with this extra piece of functionality, they can serve a new client base or any number of things that the software can fill. Organizational direction. So as you're analyzing what you gathered, what's the flow through the organization? What's the hierarchy? Where are they looking to go? All useful things. Title and key names of key individuals. So, I mean, you're gathering all that, but you want to identify as we move forward, these are the people that are kind of key to making this work out well. What are the organizational values? So, do they care only about making more money? They don't care about their employees or their customers. Are they really customer oriented? Selling orbital shift to a business. You can identify right away, do they want to purchase the system because it can help employees? Well, then you want to pitch it a certain way. Do they want to purchase it just because they think they can make more money and they don't care? We saw both. So if you're going to develop a system for someone, money. Yeah. I mean, I have a tainted view of business now just because I dealt with a lot of bad people I felt like. So,
I was in the information systems degree over there in computer science degree. Yeah, that was basically the exact reason why. So that the way that people know about business is just
exactly. That's why I fled back to education. It's like I'm going the other direction. People will do anything to get ahead. It's done to us over and over again. Yeah, there's really not. And, there's some people where there is. But, I mean, a lot, there's not. Special information processing circumstances. You could really say any special circumstances that are going on. You want to identify rules for processing data. These are super important, like I was saying. What's the procedure? Using the teller example again, when a check comes in. How does that get processed? Where does that go through? If you don't understand that, you're not going to write software to support it at all. Now, orbital shift, I talked about this before. I created for the time clock, overtime calculations that could export to QuickBooks. And I had clients freak out on me because I wasn't doing it right. Then when they talked to their CPA, they've been doing it wrong for 20 years, breaking the law. So I understood the rules for processing payroll data better than the accountants and bookkeepers did, but I was still wrong and screamed at. So we dealt a lot with businesses. If we're going to sell you a software and you're going to use it to break the law, what's our liability there? Do we support the methods for overtime calculation that businesses are using that are technically illegal? And I drew the line. I said, no, we're doing it by the books. And if that doesn't fit how you're doing it, because what happens in these businesses is if you work at two wages, they just usually pay you overtime based on whatever position you were working in when you went into overtime. That's not legal. So say I'm a bartender and I make $8 an hour, and I'm a waiter and I make 10. And when I enter overtime, I'm bartending. Yeah, it'd probably be the other way around. Let's say 8 for the waiter, 10 for the bartender. If I'm working as a waiter from 40 to 45 hours and I get paid overtime on that lower rate, I'm kind of getting screwed, right? Because maybe I worked 38 hours as a bartender that week, and I only just did one extra shift right at the end of the week at that lower wage. Then I'm getting paid overtime. That's how a lot of businesses do it because it's easy, right? You just look, what were they doing when they went over 40? Pay them overtime at that rate. It's supposed to be ratioed out. What was the percentage you worked that week as a bartender? What was the percentage you worked as, you're right, as a waiter? Take and wait, if you had 8 hours overtime, maybe 6 go to the bartender rate, 2 go to the waiter, and it's supposed to be paid that way. That's the legal way to do it by the federal government in the state of Montana, but a lot of people don't do it that way. A lot of businesses will just, and this is kind of nice, they'll just, whatever your higher rate is, they'll just pay you overtime at that. Because then they're legal, but they don't have to do the crazy, complicated calculations. We saw that. So that fits in with this rules. If you go into a business and their rules for dealing with financial transactions are illegal, obviously you're not going to support that. But they might try to get you to. So it's kind of a balancing between rules and laws, I guess. Yeah, you do. All the concessions and stuff for all the games, they're all scheduled on those. Some of the guys in databases have been in the system.
I know about that.
Yeah, Will had some. I think they use it in some other departments in campus now too, but that's a pretty big client. Football games have a lot of staff, and all the people would be staffed on those. So this table compares the observation and then the document analysis. On these tables, some of them are just not that useful, but just weighing when you observe the data versus when you analyze it, kind of the difficulty. It's just, this is not a great table. So let's talk a little bit about these modern methods for determining requirements. So the first they talk about is joint application design. So the idea is you're going to bring together the key users, the managers, and the analysts together. And you're going to collect system requirements simultaneously from key people. Rather than having these isolated interviews, you're going to, it's like having a big brainstorming session. For this to be successful, though, you need employees that feel like they can say what they think without fear of their managers. There's a lot of ways this could go wrong. There's a lot of good that can come out of it if it goes right. So you conduct it off-site. You don't go to the business and do it because that brings in a certain bias, right? If you go into someone's office and do it, that hierarchy of manager to employee is very entrenched. If you go somewhere else, rent a conference room at a hotel, or bring it to your office as the analyst, there's a little less of that goes on. So there's more in the book about JAD. Like I said, there's RAD, which is pretty similar. I didn't put the image in here. The book has an image of, I thought it was funny, a typical JAD session. It's got a picture of tables in a square, and it actually shows that you have name tents for every person that's in there. It actually labels, like, these are name tents, and here's the whiteboard, and here's the projector screen, and they're like very specific. Like, you're gonna have a JAD session. Here's how you should set up your room. But, yeah. So I thought that was funny, but So prototyping is the other method. These are both falling into this agile process we'll delve into more going forward. So prototyping is the idea is you have a repetitive process. So you build a rudimentary version of the system, and then you get some feedback and you build some more. That's how it's repetitive. It iterates over and over again. This is exactly how we did all of Orbital Shift. We went to our first clients and we said, we're developing this scheduling software. If you'll put it in your business, we'll let you use it for free. We want to see how it works. We want to get feedback. So I said it before, we had our first test customer, it's Paradise Falls, 3 months from the day I started writing code. So the system wasn't very good and couldn't do very much, but it was there. They used it for a couple months and then we're like, which I don't blame them. It wasn't very good. We were hoping they'd stick around, and help us get it to be better. Then we had Sean Kelly's used it for a while. It worked all right. They didn't fully buy in, but on exit, they gave us a ton of good feedback. Like, well, really, it needs to do this for it to be useful, and we did that. We lost our first 2 clients because we gave them something that sucked, but we got such good feedback that then our 3rd client stayed forever. So we had our first client that never left, 7, 8, 9 months after we started, probably 7 or 8. So just keep adding pieces to the software. When I first had the software, you would view your schedule, and if you were a bartender and you were a waitress or a waiter, your events would only show up on one or the other, so you couldn't really see that continuous. That was one of the big feedbacks from Sean Kelly. It's like, I need to look at the bartender, and if someone's already working as a waiter, I need to know so I don't schedule them also as a bartender. That just was a functionality we had up front. Things like that. So yeah, I mean, kind of. Yeah, there's not a lot of UI pictures. I don't know. When I left, which was 2 years ago, we had clients in like 27 states. We probably had, I don't know, 50, I'd say, of various size. Some of them are big, like, I don't know, nursing home facilities with 100 and some employees, or smaller hospitals, stuff like that. I don't know where they're at now. I mean, like I said, I was messaging with one of my employees, and he said there's only 3 people working there now. So there was more when I was there. So I don't know that. Sign it up. Got to put your credit card in, though. I wonder what would happen if I just signed up for a trial. Like, how long they'd see my name and they'd probably block. They'd probably delete me out. Just we're on bad terms. I got kicked out of the company and because I don't know why. Because I went back to school to be a teacher, but I got forcefully removed. Yeah. So anyway.
I could chat with them. Like, hello, my name is Daniel.
So back to this. I mean, I can easily get in rants, and I try not to, but I do sometimes. So this prototyping sort of replaces the traditional life cycle process, right? But I think in a lot of ways it can augment it. It doesn't have to be like we're throwing the whole process out, but it is a little different. So the goal is to develop concrete specifications for the ultimate system. Not the ultimate system, for ultimate system. Meaning the end, not this is the ultimate system. And that's exactly what happened with Orbital Shift. Is you were gathering from test clients. So we're kind of just simultaneously discussing the JAD and the prototyping. So the end result of JAD is that you want to get documentation detailing. What's the existing system? What features will the new system have? Oh, I did put this sweet picture in here. Nice. I thought this was so funny. This is adapted from Wood and Silver, 1989. So
Yeah, before they had my work on
that side. I was surprised they had a screen because it's so dated looking. But make sure you don't forget your name, Tense. I think it's right there.
Yeah, they removed the whole thing. Photoshopped out the whole thing.
Yeah,
You gotta have a magnetic board and
magnetic
a scanner. What is that?
and a printer.
A massive size.
I
I think they took that guy in the middle from Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
Put a suit on.
So if you ever do a joint session like this, I want you to set it up just like this and send me a picture.
The scanner and the printer.
Yeah, it's got to hang from.
Does
that,
it scan the whiteboard? Is that what that does?
They say this is a magnetic board. Is this some 80s technology that we're all too, well, Tom? The rest of us are too young to have seen?
Before that, they weren't magnetic.
It does look like this would scan the board, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Like you have to slide across it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you put stuff on that and then scan it across and then it printed it out.
Somebody look it up.
I am actually
Like scanner magnetic board.
magnetic boards.
Like an 80s magnetic board scanner.
So the prototyping, the idea is that we want to quickly convert requirements to working version. Sean Kelly tells us we need to see the feature ended up being called shadow events because it would shadow from one position to another. That's just what I call them, with shadow events. And you could turn them on and off because sometimes you didn't want to see that. If you just wanted to see bartender coverage, you didn't want to see a whole bunch of waiter ones mixed in. But if you're trying to schedule someone and not overlap, then you want to be able to see that. So we took that feature within 6 weeks or something, it was there. Wasn't quick enough to get the sale, but it was worth it for the future. So once the user sees that requirement implemented, they'll ask for modifications. They'll say, yeah, this is really great if it can only do this. And this is the never-ending spiral you get into, right? But if we could have developed Orbital Shift for one business, it would have been a lot easier than developing it for 20 different businesses, of varying from restaurants to hotels to hospitals to, I mean, people with completely different grocery stores, different requirements. But this book is definitely focused almost 100% on you're developing one system for one client, and if they ask for a request, you don't have to worry, what's that going to screw up for everyone else? And that's what we had to deal with a lot. So prototyping, when is this useful? When user requests are not clear. So you get some idea, you put in your own spin, well, they kind of said this, I think this is the best way to do it. Let's prototype it and see what they have to say. Few users are involved in the system. So prototyping is awesome for dealing with the kind of small businesses we have a lot of here. It's hard to prototype something for Coca-Cola, right? I mean, how many people in different locations are going to use that? How are you going to get them to try the prototype? They have offices all around the world. It almost doesn't make sense. Designs are complex and require concrete form to evaluate fully. So, I mean, I think prototypes are useful even when the designs aren't complex. I love prototypes. But if you can break down something complex into these smaller pieces and use that to evaluate the whole system, that's really useful. History of communication problems between the analysts and users. If you've been dealing with a business before, and you did a project for them, and they gave you all these requirements, and you developed it, and they said, no, that's not what we wanted. Well, next time maybe prototyping early to get feedback before you wasted a bunch of times. And then this piece, tools are readily available to build prototypes. So you can prototype in a million ways. You can actually use PowerPoint and put images and have them when you click on them, it takes you to a new screen. PowerPoint used to be a big prototype. Anymore though, with all the tools on the web or in some of the IDEs we have, like in Visual Studio, I can mock up an interface really fast. It won't work. Everything won't work behind it, but to get someone to see how it's going to work, you can fake it. You can put some fake data. When you click on it, it shows something, and it's not connected to the database, and it's not working, but it's getting them the flow of it. So for some systems, there's good tools for that. Others, there might not be. So of course, I'm just making prototyping sound like the end-all solution, but what tends to happen in prototyping is some of these more formal things which can be useful just go by the wayside. So you don't document something. Someone tells you something, you're like, oh yeah, I can do that. You code it up, you show it to them, and then a manager sees it and they say, why did you do this? Well, you didn't document it. You didn't track down why that was done, who that came from. Because you just, well, I could do it in an hour, I'll just do it. That happens a lot. You kind of get into this thing, why did we do this? Like, well, 12 months ago when we did this feature, what was the reason for that? Who was the client that wanted that? You just don't document stuff. Difficult to adapt to a more general user audience. So someone might give you a great idea and you do it, put it in prototype, and it's only useful for that one person that does one very specific job and not for the other 20 people that have to use that same system. Sharing data with other systems is often not considered. So to design a good piece of software that's going to interact with other softwares or databases takes some more thought. Prototyping often lets that go. Now ideally, you'd build a prototype and you'd get all the information you'd want, and then what would you do with your prototype? Scrap it, start over, and design a well-constructed software. What do you think really happens? That prototype for orbital shift is still the same code base that's running today. It was never scrapped and redesigned. It's really hard in a startup like that where it's like you need revenue so bad to stop doing features to rewrite the thing for 6 months or something. It actually ended up all right. I think I had enough knowledge about good system design, and I tried to follow that even though we were in prototype phase, that it held up very well. A lot of times, I'm not just saying like, well, I'm so great that it worked out, but it's really easy to not engineer that stuff in, and then it's really hard to add it later. So ideally, you gather the requirements from the prototype, and then you actually design and implement the real system. So all the checks with the systems development lifecycle, you oftentimes bypass them. You're moving fast, it's a prototype. So last couple slides here. This business process re-engineering. So the idea here is that we're searching for an implementation of radical change in business processes to achieve breakthrough improvements. So rather than just, well, we're going to come in and develop this system and it'll fix the process better. We're talking about blowing it up and something that completely changes how things were done and is a huge breakthrough. So, goals. Reorganize complete flow of data in major sections of an organization. So don't try to refine the bank teller process. Try to completely reinvent the bank teller process. Eliminate unnecessary steps. So, eliminating one step out of 10 I wouldn't say that's blowing the thing up, but if you could really cut like half the steps out of a process, combining kind of works with the eliminating. And then can you develop a system that's more responsive to future change? So if you want to identify a process that you want to completely re-engineer, not just refine, you're re-engineering it. You want to look at the key business process. It doesn't make sense to re-engineer some small side thing. If you're going to really blow something up to get a huge improvement for a business, looking at the main things that they do. So, set of activities designed to produce specific output for a particular customer or market. So, key things. Focused on customers and outcomes. So, it's nice to improve things for a business to help their internal processes. It's really nice if you can blow something up and reinvent it that helps their customers. If they're focused correctly on how businesses should be run, you should always be focused on your customer. So the same techniques are used when we're looking at this. It's just, it's bigger. So identify specific activities that can be improved. This is where this idea of disruptive technologies comes in place. I talked about this before. Clayton Christensen coined this idea in the 90s of things that come in and completely change the traditional way that things were done. So technologies that enable the breaking of long-held business rules that inhibit organizations from making radical business changes. So I'll show you some examples in a second. They have some examples here. I think these are kind of weak. So rule information can appear in only one place at a time, like in one database and no one can access it. The disruptive technology would be to distribute this. These, like I said, these are looking at business processes. I'm more interested in the specific technologies. So summary, we'll leave that until next time. On Moodle, I posted a few articles. The first is a Wikipedia article about disruptive technology. And this is interesting. It's worth reading through. It starts at the top with disruptive innovation. That's kind of a more broad area, but disruptive technologies are what I'm kind of most interested in. And here they list some examples. So within academia, Wikipedia was a disruptive innovation. So it completely disrupted, like almost overnight, traditional encyclopedias just went away and became pointless, right? I mean, it happened really fast. So it softened a lot.
Because like, so everybody always says like you can't use putting on there and try it.
It started to change. Studies have shown it's, especially on like core things and not fringe topics, it's pretty dang accurate.
Another thing I really hated about that is we had that in our high school. My whole thing was, why don't, instead of just like, no, you can't use it, why don't you have classes on how to use it?
Right.
You know, like, yes, it's a good place to start.
Yeah, and then go look at the references at the bottom for the specifics.
Exactly. You know, like everything, you know, to be on there has to have some source to it. And then, but yeah, the art teachers were just like, nope, you can't use it. If you cite anything from it, it's, you know, it's like, why would you not use all resources on your map?
Yeah, my school fee is my fee
Right. So there's a bunch of examples in here. I think a good one is digital photography came in and really quickly disrupted traditional photography. Now, you know, some of these, I think this article, you know, this has some stuff about cleaning up. It's interesting. Up here it says automobile was not a disruptive innovation because when it came out, it was so expensive. It's not like instantly everyone had it, got rid of their horses and their buggies. So it has to be something that you know, like I said before, Google Apps has been cited as one, you know, where it just comes in and it's cheaper and accessible and it kind of blows things up. But then down here in the table, they list automobiles disrupted rail, didn't necessarily disrupt horse and buggy.
I was gonna say,
I think that's,
I would think like buses did more for that than
yeah,
automobiles. Because like I said, most people didn't just go out and buy a car. Mass transportation, especially in bigger cities,
right.
was a lot more useful for most people. So,
Like, still,
You know, digital music and MP3s is a pretty disruptive technology. You know? Like, I mean, they don't even really have that specific. Oh yeah, downloadable digital media. You know,
like the iPod basically killed the Walkman overnight.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
you remember, like, right before the iPod and everything came out, they came out with a little music thing that had, like, a little big SD card. And they're like, oh, that's so stupid. Why would anybody just want SD card music on it? I want my iPhone.
Yeah.
And now everybody has it.
I put 2 other articles in here. One is 7 tools to gather better software requirements. That's what we're talking about, is requirements. And they just show, these aren't like software tools. These are like different kinds of diagrams and stuff that can be very useful. And then I put a link here to the Agile manifesto. So we're going to get more into Agile and just so you can kind of read through this. But the guys that came up with this, their website is like really awful, but
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't use their own.
this is 2001 here,
Also, back
this
in the
group,
day, that was kind of
but this Agile manifesto is cited all over the place. Like, it's kind of the fundamental, and this has become popular in software. Like, the Python language has all these almost like manifestos, these guidelines that guide, like, simpler is better than, I can't remember how they say it, but there's a bunch of them.
It's like
It's a useful tool. I guess for Python, I think they call them philosophies. The Zen of Python. Beautiful is better than ugly. They have all these kind of things. Simple is better than complex. Let's design a big sucky slow language. All right. Bye on the Hangouts.